Hello, if you are joining us again, welcome back. And if you're here for the first time, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Going Deeper. This is the show where we get to sit down with some of our staff here at MRCC and discuss our sermons and our ministries and dive a little more into the content that's there. So today we have joining us Pastor Tyler. He's our youth pastor. Welcome, Tyler. Thank you for coming in.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course.
Today we're going to discuss youth ministry. We're going to talk a little bit about its importance, and I think unless you're a parent of current teenagers, it might be lost on you a little bit, the importance of youth ministry and what it means. So we're going to dive a little bit into that. We know that God has and still does use young people in extraordinary ways.
Yeah.
And it's worth our effort to understand the role that we as the larger church play in their lives. So right out the gate, for those who maybe don't know who you are, would you share just a little bit about your heart for youth ministry?
Yeah, my name is Tyler. I've been at MRCC for
Long time.
Really long time. If you don't know my dad, Zach, he was the youth pastor here for a very long time as well. And I was a youth leader for a very long time. And then there was a period of my life where I was not involved in youth ministry at all. Partially COVID, partially just myself and everything that I was going through at the time.
Yep.
And 2 years ago, I had a radical heart change. And I had this understanding and seeing that this generation really needs to be invested in, and my heart just exploded for youth. And so, through everything, I got hired here when our previous youth pastor left, and we've been just running forward ever since.
Absolutely. Okay, fantastic. And some may not know this, some of you might, but I started my journey in youth ministry.
Yeah.
Pastor Zach was my youth pastor. And so I actually began vocational ministry in youth specifically. And if you know me well, you know that I'm not a trendy guy, really, in the least. I'm not hip with the jive, as the kids would say.
They don't say that anymore.
Oh, dang. There we go. So I found it really hard to relate to and get immersed in the culture of today's kids. So how do you balance being relatable to the kids while also still being set apart as a spiritual mentor and example to them?
I really do my best to understand and see trends.
Okay.
You talked about being trendy.
Yep.
And so I do spend a lot of time on social media and just seeing the content, the same content that they are seeing, and understanding and being able to understand that and see that. But there's a line between wanting to be their friend and being their leader.
Yeah.
Just because I've been in youth ministry as a youth leader for so long and then became a youth pastor, all of my failures, and I still continue to fail, but all of my failures have helped because I'm able to understand and see, oh, okay, well, I can't be their buddy because, then I don't have that opportunity to really speak into their life. Yeah. And yes, I want to be kind and be friendly and be and hang out with them, but there is a line, and then I would not say that I am super trendy either, compared to what is out there. I am still on the skinny jean trend.
Skinny jean trend,
and
yep.
I refuse
It'll
to
come
get
back
off.
around eventually.
Yeah, eventually. I refuse to get off of that train. I actually don't really wear skinny jeans anymore, but they're slim straight, but all of the kids call them skinny jeans.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it seems like a decent part of the role of being a youth pastor and even, youth leader to some extent is research, right? It seems like what you're describing is a very research-based. You're constantly kind of trying to look into and investigate sort of what their world is like so that you can better understand them and relate to them and stuff, which I think maybe that was a portion that I didn't really understand as well when I was in youth ministry.
Sure.
Is like, well, I am who I am. And it's like, that was where that disconnect was. So great to hear. Okay. I think it's a phenomenon as old as time where older generations tend to sort of see the ways in which the youth are failing or are sort of scared of the younger generation.
Yeah.
I looked into this, and there's actually a term for it. It's called juvenoia. And if you think of the word paranoia and juveniles, juvenoia is the
I thought it
actual
meant that they were
phrase.
Annoyed by juveniles.
No. Juvenoia, Noia, is the sort of term used for this phenomenon it happens, like it's not a new thing,
No,
right? It's
no.
every generation always sort of sees
Right.
the younger one as like, oh, they're into, you can look at excerpts from the Roman times where the elders are complaining about how all the kids do is they go outside and they play their little games outside and stuff. And it's like, oh, that's just like today.
Yeah.
But to combat this idea, especially today, what admirable qualities have you seen in this generation that people might not realize or focus on that you want to share?
Oh man, this generation, they are so much more accepting and loving and kind. At least way more than my generation, for sure. They kind of have to be in this day and age, but they do it so well because a lot of them understand and recognize the seriousness of the Bible and everything like that. But they also know, like, Jesus hung out with sinners.
Yeah.
And that's what we're called to do, is we're called to hang out with sinners. We're called to hang out with people who are not like us and be a light. And this generation they just do that so well. Yeah. And it's really beautiful to see. I just remember when I was in middle school and high school, like we each had our own cliques.
Yeah.
Right. And that's who we hung out with. And the cliques, changed throughout the school and whatnot. To me, anytime I go to a school or I'm talking to students or I'm at a sporting event or anything like that, at a play, I mean, it is literally just kids everywhere. And yes, they have friends who they hang out with and stuff like that, but it is just all kids everywhere all the time.
Very
together.
Supportive of each other.
Very supportive of each other. Yes.
Yeah. And that's definitely, I mean, I think we're from the same generation, and it's sort of, I didn't grow up in the church, but I definitely have seen this tendency and have experienced it when I was a new believer, that there's this sort of idea of like, oh, well, we don't want to associate with these people because they're kind of,
right.
You don't want to get in the midst of the mess because then you can kind of get dragged into it. That was the idea, is like, well, we're scared of being dragged into the mess, so we don't want to be in the midst of it.
Or even associated, like,
or even associated
I don't want
with
to be
it.
Seen.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I do think that that's something, we can constantly see that Jesus was in the middle of a bunch of people who maybe a lot of us by today's standards would consider, the unmentionables, the ones we don't want to hang out with.
Yep.
And Jesus was there. And so it's really cool to hear that that's the idea, that these kids sort of are more naturally prone to just saying, hey, we're going to be around all these people. We want to be accepting and supportive in the way that lets us witness to them and shine that light.
Yeah.
Super cool. What would you say is the biggest thing that this generation of kids needs from those of us who are older?
I would say patience. They need so much patience because COVID is 4 years old at this point, right?
It doesn't feel like
No, it doesn't. It
feels like it was 10 years ago.
Feels like it's 10 years
year.
ago. Yeah, exactly. And so a lot of these kids, they had to grow up in COVID. I mean, I can't tell you how many kids, they didn't get to walk at graduation. They haven't done sports. They haven't done all of these things. And we're not really going to see how much that really affects us. We're seeing a little bit of it now, but we're not really going to see how much it affects
long-term stuff. We're going to have to wait.
Yeah, probably until another 4 or 5 years or so.
Yeah.
And they lost a lot of that. They lost a lot of the social aspects. They lost a lot of just the social interactions that we had to deal with during COVID. And so the patience that they need to be able to learn that, it's gonna take time.
Yeah.
And it's something that I even struggle with every week on Wednesday, because on Wednesday nights, because we have youth, and some kid will do something and I'll be like, why are you like this? And
What's
then
wrong with you?
Yeah, and then I'm like, oh, like, you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know because you've had to deal with this. And it's just one of those things that is gonna take time. And I am an instant gratification person.
Yep.
And so I'm like, no, somebody said to do this, so I just get it and I do it. And yeah, I'm gonna mess up, but I'm gonna try my hardest. This generation isn't like that. They need time and energy and patience really, really poured into them.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely in contrast to what so many of our experiences are, where, I would say maybe our generation is sort of more that instant gratification, the start of that instant gratification generation, where it's like, well, we got to just do things ourselves to get it done. And if you want something right, do it yourself. But it's hard to have that patience I think until we realize that, oh man, you know, the amount of patience that Jesus has had with me when I've been a big dumb idiot, you know?
Yeah.
And
it's such a good reminder.
Oh, yeah. And even if you think about it from a parental standpoint, which is, you know, God's relationship to us is very parental. He is such a good, patient father to us. And so we're to model that with everybody. And hearing that that's really what kids of this generation need. You know, it can be easy when we have some stuff figured out to look at it and be like, why don't you know this? You know, why aren't you acting like this?
Why don't you understand?
Why don't you get it? But there's still a lot of things that God's probably saying to me, why don't you get this?
Yes,
you know,
100%.
And so it's a good reminder.
Yeah.
Okay, to sort of wrap up and wind down, close out the show, I'm sure you have many moments that stand out as being either really hilarious or really sweet and joyful from your time in youth ministry. Does one memory sort of come up that you'd want to share with us of something that's happened?
Oh, man. There's so many.
Yeah.
There's so many. Oh, man. I'm trying to think off
the
top of my head. Oh, okay. So this is... Before technically I was the youth pastor here. I was interim.
Youth related. Yep.
I was interim.
Yep.
And I had a student come up to me and they were just talking about, you know, the process of hiring and everything like that. And I said, you know, I am in the middle of this process. You know, I'm doing the exact same thing as every other candidate. I'm just here running the program while we're searching.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he goes, oh man, I think that you'd be a really good youth pastor. You're a ton of fun at winter camp and summer camp. And I said, oh, thanks, man. And then I cocked my head and thought about it. And I said, I've never been to a summer camp with you before. And he was like, he saved it really good. He was like, well, I think you'd be a lot of fun at summer camp and winter camp. And I was like, good save.
Bottom line, these kids don't know what they're doing or what they're talking about, but they need patience. And it's really encouraging to hear that this is a generation that already has such a key thing that we're called to do, which is to go out into the world, to be, you know, surround ourselves with all kinds of people and to be a light to them. To have that sort of figured out and be very natural at that is encouraging to hear. So awesome. Well, thank you for sitting down, for sharing with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching, for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.